so glad that you are joining us for this conversation tonight. There has been months of planning that have gone into this conversation that we're about to have this evening. But first, we want to give you all a quick introduction. We know that some of you watching with us this evening may know who we are, but several of you may be joining us for the very first time. So my name is Becca Kavas, and I'm the Director of Student Ministries here at Community of Faith Churches. I've been in this position for about 6 years, and I work with 6th through 12th graders. I absolutely love what I get to do. It was kind of a thing I was thrown into right away, and over the years that I've been able to work with students and walk through them with so many things, it has just been a really big privilege to get to walk with people's journeys, their stories, sit with them, get to know them. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight has been part of those conversations from the past several years. This is Megan, and she's our youth intern. So Megan, a little bit about you.
Yeah, so like she said, I'm the youth intern this year. I had the opportunity to work with youth in high school a lot, and I absolutely loved it. So I knew that working with youth within the internship was what I wanted to do, and I just love the relationships I've gotten to build with the kids, and seeing them every week is definitely the highlight of my week. So it's been a super great opportunity.
Yeah. So a little bit of what we're going to be talking about, you guys get a behind the scenes look. We have had conversations over the past several months about a lot of these things, but we're giving you kind of an open view into what those things have looked like, and then just the help that we, one, want to give students, but also equip parents to be able to help their students as best as possible. So Megan, as we said, this has been months that we've looked at planning, and you actually originally came to me with this idea and wanted to run with it. So can you talk a little bit about kind of where the culmination of that idea came from and why you wanted to do this?
Yeah, so I've always had a passion for mental health and just educating people on it. And within youth, whenever we would talk about it, it was really shocking to me how many kids identified with symptoms of anxiety or depression or other mental health issues. And with how many people were identifying with it, I knew that there was something we needed to do. And then on the other hand, I know that it's super hard as a parent to walk through that with your kid. And so we just wanted to bridge that gap between the kids and the parents and get that conversation started and help the kids have a safe place to go when they're identifying with those symptoms and are not sure what to do.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about the fact that a lot of times parents may think that they're doing a really good job of these things, or maybe they don't even know where to start. Kind of talk a little bit about what you found out from parents and students about that conversation about mental health.
Yeah, so I actually sent out a survey, one to students and one to parents, and one of the questions in there was, do you have open conversations with either your kids about mental health or your parents about mental health? And the parents, about 90% of them said, yes, I have open conversations with my kids about their mental health. But then the survey I sent to the students, only about 10% of them said they were having open conversations with their parents. So seeing that disconnect really just made me want to fill that in, make sure those conversations are being had, and give some tools on maybe how to start them or keep them going.
Yeah. So, and I think there's several parents out there who would say, I have these conversations regularly with my students. Maybe we have good conversations. And then there's a lot of you parents out there who probably think, again, where do I even start with this conversation? Or again, mental health is almost a taboo topic in our culture. And a lot of people would even say, I don't know if I struggle with that. Is my student struggling with that? As we kind of look through some statistics, it says that about 20% of students deal with some type of mental health issue right now. And I would actually say, from what we've talked about, those behind the scenes conversations and what we've dealt with students, I would say a lot more students, and probably almost every student. It was really shocking to me. We actually did a poll several months ago during youth, and when we kind of talked about some of these issues or maybe things that people deal with or the things that they feel that might be attributed to anxiety or depression or different things, almost every single one of those students has at least walked through those things one time, would you say? And so maybe what would you say, because I think there's this stigmatism around what mental health is, especially getting help for it. Do I even deal with these things? No, I don't think I do. And those statistics probably look a lot larger. So what would you say, mental health or mental illness maybe looks like?
Yeah, so I think there is a difference between mental health and mental illness, first of all. mental health, everybody has mental health. It's kind of a spectrum. So it's either really good or really bad or anywhere in between. And then mental illness comes into play when it's something more consistent, maybe more diagnosed on the bad end of that spectrum. So I think things to look out for as far as anxiety, maybe they're wanting to distance themselves from friends, from school, from things they usually enjoy. There can also be a lot of physical symptoms actually, so stomach aches, headaches, shakiness, loss of appetite. There's definitely a lot of things that go into it. Things like irritability and moodiness, so it can be really hard to know if that's just like a teenager being a teenager or the symptoms of anxiety. So we're hoping that by opening this conversation up, you get a better idea of when it might be time to ask more questions, when maybe their mental health is not doing as well as it should be.
Yeah, and I think, for the people out there that this would be kind of a common habit for your kid that they've had maybe ever since they were really little. It's easy to look and say those are just parts of their personality, but maybe there's something deeper that was going on there. You were saying that as you were younger, kind of dealing with some of these things. So it's really easy to look and say, that's just part of my kid's personality. But maybe there's something different there and a different conversation that maybe needs to have about those things, especially as they continue to walk into adulthood, of how they deal with those things. And if things start to pop up all of a sudden, maybe you're like, my kid has never had these issues before, and that's not them at all. I want to read you guys this quote because it's kind of our charge as adult roles, but specifically parents in these students' lives. It says, when stress becomes persistent over time, parents should pay close attention and ask questions. And I know that I have so many parents who come to me all the time, and it's really, really hard for them to have these conversations because let's talk about teenagers just in general. Like, their moods flip like that. And so you may have a great conversation one day, and then the next day it's like they completely shut you down, and you're thinking, this is not them at all, but should I start to approach this conversation? Should I be asking these questions? How much space am I supposed to give them? But especially as parents and adults in these kids' lives, it's our role to pay very close attention to those things that are going on in their lives and start to ask questions, even if we feel uncomfortable or we feel really dumb, like maybe there was nothing wrong at all. I think it means so much to our students and to our children when we ask those questions. And so, Megan, maybe just what are a couple things that you've kind of walked through this a little bit. What are some really key things maybe that people asked you who played that role in your life, or that you even started to kind of ask yourself?
Yeah, so I found out that I was diagnosed with anxiety in my senior year of high school, but I think I have had it most of my life. Even as a kid, if I didn't know in school or at home what we were doing next, I freaked out and could not function. Like, I just had to know what was coming, or I had anxiety. And since I had had it for so long, I didn't even realize anything was wrong. I just thought it was who I was. And so then my senior year, when it got really bad, I couldn't even function. I couldn't go to class. I couldn't think about anything. And that's when I had to start asking myself those questions, like, I can't live like this, even if this is how I've been my whole life up until now. I can't keep doing this. So I actually had to reach out. But I think if someone had asked me questions sooner on, it would have saved me a lot of trouble and just a lot of the feeling like, if that's how I've been my whole life, what can anyone do, kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, it's really easy to feel helpless in these situations that we don't know the right things to say. I'm going to be honest, from both sides, I don't think anybody always knows what to do. We all feel a little helpless in this, again, because mental health and these conversations have been such a stigma in our society, and they just have a bad rap. And so I don't know that we even have the right tools, which, as we talked about this and you came to me with this idea, that was why I was so excited about it, was just that conversation. One, for students to feel like they could start expressing themselves, or maybe start to put like a name to their feelings that they've had for a really long time. And two, for parents or an adult to be able to feel like they can ask the right questions to help those conversations, and really feel like at least students are able to express their feelings and emotions, but also are we walking them in a journey towards good health for these mental things that are happening with them. And so, one of the really important things is, even if we don't know what to say, I would encourage you guys in this, don't dismiss their feelings either. Don't just say that, it's a time and a season. The way that they feel, it's really important. And I kind of almost want to encourage you to go back to when you were in their shoes, not speak from the situations in life. Because as we get tools that help us adapt and change and grow to things, it's really easy to say, well, I know this is not such a big deal anymore, but to these kids, it's a really big deal. I would say right now, currently, with everything that's going on around us, there's a lot of hurt and heartache, worry and anxiety, a lot of things that are happening. And to these kids, it's a really big deal. And I don't think that they have feelings or emotions to be able to put to a lot of that. And so it was funny because I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, I honestly think right now kids don't know what to feel about some of these things that are happening in their lives. And so they kind of take this role of just stuffing them down and pushing them to the side, and then almost caring for the people in their lives and seeing what they can do for them. And that's just not healthy, because it's negating our emotions, and sometimes that can do some really bad damage. And so I want to encourage us as parents and adults, don't dismiss what your kids are feeling. Ask them those questions. When you dismiss your child's anxiety or issues that are going on, the message that you're conveying to them is that they're all alone and they have to deal with this by themselves. And nobody ever likes that feeling in life, when they feel like they're alone and they don't know how to properly deal with something, and so they're on their own in this. Again, if you don't have the right words to say, just being with them and saying, it's okay to not be okay, and we're gonna work through this together. And again, not coming at it from the side of, I've already been through this. That's a really hard one. That's a really hard one for me not to say, is that I've been through some of these things in life. I promise it's going to work out okay. It's real to them right now. And so don't speak from it from a logic of where you're at in life right now either. Your logic doesn't speak to emotions. Emotions are what they are. And so it's okay for your students to feel worried or stressed or hurt or whatever that may be. And so we hope that through tonight, both sides are able to get maybe some tools, some better ways to have conversations. And so we're going to hear from several people tonight about maybe what these conversations look like, maybe what we should say, what we shouldn't say, and just things to help create those conversations. So Megan, who's the first person we're going to hear from tonight?
The first person is Kelly Ott. So she is a licensed counselor with a lot of experience. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and tune to that video.
Hey guys. Thanks so much for joining in. As you may know, there was supposed to be a panel presentation on mental health and your children this Sunday at the church. Unfortunately, coronavirus struck and we are all quarantined to our homes. So instead of a panel discussion, Megan with the church reached out to me and asked me if I would record a video for you regarding the topic of mental health in your children. So first I want to tell you I apologize. I am not tech savvy at all, and this is totally uncomfortable for me. I like talking to people, not cameras, but I am going to give it a shot. So if I stop quickly and have to restart or something, again, I absolutely apologize. But first off, a little bit about me. My name is Kelly Ott. I am married to Kevin and mom to a beautiful blended family. Many of you probably know Jen, who is married to Will Peterson and Brooke Selby at the church, and then Maggie Ott is our youngest, and then Kevin has an older son, Austin, as well. So that is our family. By trade, I am an independently licensed social worker. I've actually been practicing in the field of social work for about 25 years now. Started out at a little agency in Preble County called the Preble County Counseling Center, and currently, 25 years later, am in more administration, the mental health side, at a large behavioral health organization in Dayton. So that's who I am. Again, you were supposed to get a breadth of knowledge from a panel discussion, and unfortunately it's just me. So one of the things that I thought would be really important, because I don't have as much direct contact with kids and family as I used to, I actually reached out to some of my colleagues and asked them for feedback on the questions that were posed to me. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit as I read, but I feel like really you'll get a lot more knowledge in their words of wisdom as well than just hearing what I have to say about the subject. So first I just want to start out in general. For some reason, I think people, when they hear the word mental illness, they just, it kind of freaks them out a little bit and they get scared, nervous, that kind of thing. And what I want you to know is that mental illness is a normal condition, just like diabetes is a normal condition. Mental illness just happens to be a disorder of the brain, whereas diabetes is a disorder affecting, from your pancreas. So just like diabetes is very treatable, mental illness is very treatable as well. And most folks that have, a depression, anxiety, that type of thing, function very normally, and you'd probably be surprised the number of people that are around you every day who are in one type of treatment or another. So again, I just want to normalize that a little bit to let you know that it's not something that we need to be afraid or ashamed of, and that you should feel comfortable talking about your mental health with folks. And we'll talk about some treatment options at the end of my presentation, but wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so let me jump into some of these questions. The first question was, can you give us an example of good dialogue between a parent and a child and poor dialogue between a parent and child when discussing mental health? So again, reached out to my colleagues, and my colleagues are Michelle and Ken, who are both independently licensed clinicians as well. Michelle says, poor dialogue would include minimizing a child's struggles, making derogatory comments about mental health in general, and then telling, the kid they don't have it that bad, there's no reason to feel the feelings they're feeling, or, yeah, everybody's felt that way at some point, it's not a big deal. Again, even though we want to normalize the fact that mental illness is around us, we don't want to minimize somebody else's feelings or what it is that they're going through. We definitely want to make sure that we're validating the fact that they're feeling the things that they are, and the struggles that might entail. So to try to minimize just to get it to go away, it's not going to happen. We really need to listen to them and let them know that we hear them when they're talking about having some distraught feelings or just not feeling right. Also, Ken says, if we focus too much on their bad behavior rather than their painful feelings, the emotions will generally escalate. So oftentimes when folks, especially kids, when they do feel very stressed out or sad or that kind of thing, they don't know what to do with it. So a lot of times we get really bad negative behaviors. They might talk back, be disrespectful, just be angry. And it's just because they don't know how to deal with all the feelings that are inside of them. So again, we just need to give them a space where they are able to talk to us through those things. Likewise, when you're talking to your kids, I think it's bad to focus on them as a person. Oh, you're such a bad kid, or you never do things right around here. Focus instead on the negative behaviors that you're seeing out of them. I really wish you weren't so disrespectful. I feel like there's something else going on there. What is it that you're thinking when you're getting angry with me? That kind of thing is more helpful than putting them down as a human being. Some good dialogue. Michelle says, acknowledge the child's feeling as being real to them. Whether you as a parent understand or agree with it. Again, they are experiencing something that you're not experiencing. So you need to validate that in them. Again, acknowledge that we have mental health and sometimes we need help managing this, particularly kids, because they're not great at identifying their feelings and talking through those things. Some of the things that we can say is, boy, it seems like you're really having a hard time with your friends lately. That must feel very overwhelming and kind of make you angry. I'm here for you if you ever need to talk about it, or, why don't you tell me some of the stuff that's going on with that? Again, talking to kids about taking care of themselves physically and mentally is actually teaching them good coping skills. You want them to talk through the things that are going on. They'll feel more comfortable with you the more you do talk to them. And that's a good side note too. It's hard for kids to talk about these real serious things with us if we don't just have conversation with them in general on a regular basis. So, talk to your kids about everything that's going on, because then hopefully, if you talk to them about normal things that are happening with them, they'll feel more comfortable and confident coming to you with the harder topics like these. Number 2, how can I help my child admit the reason he is stressed or not sleeping is not the easy or obvious reason? So basically, how do I help them identify what's causing the stress? Yes, stress is a huge buzzword right now. We're hearing it all over the place, but oftentimes really people don't know what's behind the stress. They just know that they're stressed. Michelle says, talk openly about what is feeling different, changes you as a parent are observing. Stating things as a question rather than a directive. So ask open-ended questions of them. Very direct questions, yes, no questions, they're going to shut down because they can answer them very quick and then they're done. But we want to ask more open-ended questions to really try to get them to talk. So she suggests, seems like you're more stressed recently. I've noticed you're not smiling as much, or you're sleeping quite a bit. Do you think your stress could be bigger than you might think it is? And maybe we should talk through some things. Another thing that I would throw out there is it's kind of like when you're trying to help them process through this, it's kind of like you're peeling an onion. You really need to talk them through each layer of what's going on, because you might throw one question out and they'll answer it, but they need more prompting for us to get to that. So again, I could say something like, hey, you seem really stressed when you get home from school lately. What's been going on with that? And they might say, I don't like school. Huh, that's interesting. So what about school is it that you really don't like? The kids are mean to me all the time. Boy, that must really be hurtful. Tell me some ways that the kids are mean to you so we can talk about ways that maybe we can make it better. So again, you're trying to, peel the onion and get to the bottom of all the layers to really find out what's going on there, so that you really then can try to put together an action plan to make things better with them. So again, not closed-ended questions, but more open-ended questions, trying to get them to talk. Next question. What not to do? This is just what not to do in general. And boy, I could do a whole discussion probably just on what not to do in general. But anyway, Ken says, whatever you do, don't ignore the problem. Kids are resilient and we're not perfect. We won't break our kids when we're concerned and try to talk to them. Again, I'm having a very difficult time talking to this camera, but I'm sure it's much more intimidating a lot of times trying to engage your kids in conversation if that's just not something that you're comfortable doing. But you're not going to break them. Really just try to engage them in conversation about everyday things first, and then hopefully the feeling stuff will start to fall in line. There are actually even some really good icebreaker things you can do with kids. There's some games that you can play that are about feelings. Sometimes us as adults aren't comfortable talking about our feelings either. So just doing some of those games that, makes you and helps you talk through your feelings and strike up conversation. Those would be great things for people to try out and do. Another big thing that I wanted to add here is don't escalate yourself. In any conversation, the best way to de-escalate a very tense conversation is to remain calm and just listen. Matter of fact, one scripture that always just comes to mind for me here is James 1:19. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. It's funny, my old secretary, when I was working back in Preble County, she was just always, she'd always tell me, man, it doesn't matter how mad somebody is when they're coming in here, because when I was working there in the position that I was in, I would get the disgruntled clients who would come and make an appeal to me about why they were mad at their therapist or case manager. And I just learned that the more you can do to remain calm in any situation, particularly when somebody else is escalated and very angry and upset, it just brings them down. It's really hard for somebody to stay up there and angry when you're just totally calm and flat and having a conversation with them and trying to get them to tell you more. Tell me more about what that feels like. Tell me more about what it is you're experiencing. How do you think I can help you with that? Just whatever you can do to try to bring them down. But again, the minute you go up there and escalate with them, it's like game on. And particularly with our kids, it's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight, and you are not going to, either one of you are going to win at all. So that's another thing. The time to have these conversations about what's going on with your kids and the stress is not when they're already agitated and angry. Try to find them at a time where they are more low-key, and then maybe broach the subject. Hey, it seems that you're not, doing well right now. It doesn't seem like you're engaging with the family as much anymore, and we really want to spend time with you. What's going on? That kind of thing, instead of approaching them when they're, already ticked off about the fact that you made them put their cell phone away for a while to come spend time with the family. Not that that ever happens in anybody else's households. Number 4, how do I handle my child's mental health in a time like this pandemic? Wow, that is a huge one, because absolutely, not just our kids are feeling stressed, but we as adults are feeling stressed because nobody really knows exactly what is going on. So one big thing that I can tell you here, though, is kids really do take emotional cues from us as adults. So if we are feeling stressed and moody and anxious, guess what? You're modeling that behavior for your kids. So we need to do everything that we possibly can. I mean, again, it's okay to feel overwhelmed and anxious, but perhaps try to do that in a private place, not out and around your kids all the time. Try to not have conversations with your spouse or friends about all the stressful things that are going on when you're out with your kids. Try to do that when you're away from your children, they're not around, that kind of thing. Because again, they're getting this everywhere. Social media, the TV, speaking of the TV, turn off the TV. Because we don't need them to be constantly flooded with everything that's going on. So again, try to regulate your own emotions so that will help them. They will feed off of your cues and how you are feeling and processing it. Something Ken says, great suggestion. Play games with them, turn on music and sing and dance, go for a walk or a hike, heck, just sit outside. That's what I really try to do, things that make me feel normal in this crazy, chaotic time. Just enjoy the sun. Thank goodness it's actually relatively nice weather, or has been. And then talk to each other about how much those coping skills really do help us feel better. Also, try to do a consistent routine. I know right now it's so easy to say, oh, sleep in, stay up and play as much video games as you want, but really, those things don't make us feel good. It makes us feel good when we stick with the routine, have a standard bedtime, have a standard wake-up time, try to eat 3 decent meals throughout the day. Yes, you can have snacks, because I like goodies too. But we don't feel as good when we constantly junk out and, again, just take showers still, just try to do your standard normal routines. And again, limit the video time, limit the social media time, limit the TV time. Also encourage them to do FaceTime with friends and relatives and that kind of thing. They need to have good, positive communication and networking with people. We thrive on community, as Pastor Justin says. It's so true. They need to be able to have access to their positive community right now. They need as much normal as they possibly can get while we're all trying to make it through everything going on with the pandemic. So again, routine, turn off the TV. When to know this is serious, or am I just overreacting? Ken said, if a child has a serious difficulty, it will show itself again and again, and that's so true. You're not just going to see things a couple times. It's going to come back and rear its ugly head over and over. And Michelle says, when you notice significant changes in that child that last for several days, that may indicate a need for concern. For instance, you're going to see changes in eating, sleeping, withdrawal from family and friends, increased anxiety, and being unable to be reassured. They might just worry a lot, and you can just see they're ruminating a lot on things. seems like they're always tense, always on edge, easy to anger, that kind of thing. And then obviously, if there's any references to self-harm or suicidal thinking, you really do need to get them help. We as parents are a good gauge of what's normal for our kids, but when they start talking about things like hurting themselves and suicide, and I might as well not even be here. It'll be better for everybody if I wasn't here. We need professionals to step in and really assess whether or not what is going on with our child is something that can be dealt with at home or needs to be clinically dealt with by a professional. So I would absolutely reach out if this has been a consistent negative behavior, or again, if they're talking about more serious action. Take those things seriously. Are there questions I can ask that are better? Every time I talk to my kid, they shut me down. Oh, and sometimes just going through those preteens years automatically are that. But again, as I said before, avoid conversation when emotions are tense. Nobody is in a good place to have a constructive conversation when you're already angry, tense, upset, that kind of thing. Also, again, we talked about engaging in activity as a way to maintain our positive mental health. Engaging kids in activity is a really great way to be able to have conversation with them. It kind of distracts them from the fact that you're having a conversation with them. Go out and play pass or bounce the basketball or go for a walk or bake with them. And while you're doing those things, you're not drilling them with questions, but, just kind of inquire, hey, how have you been lately? I'm really glad we're spending some time together. I feel like we've been missing that a lot lately. Kind of what have you been going through? What have you been thinking lately? You just seem a little more, down or depressed than what you have been. So again, perfect time is when you're actually doing something different than just sitting down and wanting them to have a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation with you, because kids don't interact as well that way. Ken also says, little kids have very short attention spans, which I'm sure you all know, and they will often stop talking when things get too serious. So again, keep it light. Play games with them and kind of just have conversations when you're playing games. Interestingly, kids are great at acting out kind of the stressors that are going on with them through play. So kind of watch their cues and see what they're doing. And then teenagers, expect little short bursts of conversation. They're not going to have big, long-winded conversations with you. And just don't expect them to sit down and get into real in-depth conversations, because that's just not generally how they're wired. And kind of look at their cues. When they start to get overwhelmed, start to get agitated, that's when you need to back off and say, okay, that's enough. I may have not gotten everything that I wanted out of you today in this conversation, but for right now, that's where we'll leave it. And again, build on that relationship that you're developing with them over time, having conversations. So you get a little piece here, a little piece tomorrow, and then that's the best case scenario. Michelle suggests using eye comments as a way, kind of again, another distraction to get them to talk to you. Saying things like, I wonder how hearing about this virus is affecting others. I wonder how kids are feeling about not being in school. Again, kind of lobbing some of those questions out there. They might actually start responding back to you and actually answering some of those, because it's not specifically addressed to them. And again, keeps the guard down a little bit and opens them up a little more to want to have conversation with you. So some closing remarks. I actually, when I was doing some research for this, stumbled across a really cool devotional. It's called Parenting by Design Daily Devotional on my Bible app. So if you're looking for a devotional, that one seemed to be really good to me. And one of the things when I was reading devotion number 12, it points us back to the Holy Spirit. And y'all, that is my battle cry for you. I prayed for wisdom in having this conversation with you, which totally stressed me out. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've gone to the Lord in prayer, asking for guidance with my kids, asking for how to talk to them, asking how to reach them, because each of our kids is so different. They each need a unique way for us to reach out to them. So I would really encourage you to take this to your prayer life and really just seek Him and find out the best way, because He will give you guidance and He will give you wisdom. And just love them where they are. Let them know you love them all the time. Basically, we need to nurture them where we are while gently nudging them where we want them to be. And I absolutely believe that you guys are fully capable of doing that. So in closing, some local resources. So not sure if everybody's aware, but there is in Preble County a place called the Preble County Mental Health and Recovery Board. They actually subsidize treatment for families that have lower incomes, and you may in fact qualify. The treatment that they offer is at Wellness and Recovery in Preble County, as well as Samaritan Behavioral Health. So you can reach out to either of those agencies to see if you qualify for financial assistance in getting your family help. Another couple of resources, Gebhardt Counseling in Eaton is an awesome resource for some therapy, and another place that I'm aware of is Stamper Moore Counseling in West Ellick. She is a phenomenal therapist as well. But a good place to start if you're really not comfortable calling upon a therapist is just your family physician. You know, they should be capable of doing a quick screen with you to determine if there is something there that clinically needs to be treated. And by clinically being treated, again, that could be just having talk therapy, or sometimes medication is necessary because of, again, just because of the brain disorder and the fact that we need to get that moving in the right direction. And oftentimes that's not medication forever or for life by any means, but just kind of resetting things and getting things moving in the right direction. So again, I hope you found this to be helpful. I hope it wasn't too distracting, me calling upon my friends to assist me with this presentation, but I pray that you all are able to find a way to reach out to your children, and truthfully, I pray that you can all find some relief from stress over this pandemic as we all muster our way through. So God bless you all, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks.
We are so glad that Kelly got to join us in on this conversation. We appreciate her advice and her expertise on this, and just what she had to share about parent and student conversations. I think it's really important. And a lot of that really just made me remember and look pretty fondly back on, you know, my mom and me, we would have a 30-minute drive to school and back home every single day. And one of the things that I loved is, you know, as a teenager, I was pretty moody sometimes. Bless my mom for dealing with me. And so I would get in the car and I'd have a bad day, or even sometimes the day would start that way, honestly, like if I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And so my mom used to do this thing with me all the time where she would make the face that I was. So if I was like having the worst day and had a grumpy face on, she would illustrate it back to me. And I love that she knew exactly what she was doing, because I would like whisper in my head, do not laugh, do not smile, do not give her the satisfaction of any of this. And without fail, every single time she would make me laugh and make me smile. And then we would have a conversation about why I was feeling the way that I was, if I was sad or upset. And I love the fact that my mom knew how to speak my language. I want to remind you guys that no matter what, like, these are your kids. You know how to speak their language. You guys have been raising them, and even though there's moments that it feels like you don't even know who they are anymore, you do know them, and you know who they are. And I would just remind you, especially like for your relationship with God, ask them what those moments are. I think my mom so many times probably did that, where she's like, God, help me speak to her in the best way. And so I want to remind you guys of this, that while parent and teen relationships are not always peaceful, they can be pivotal. And I look at the relationship that my mom had with me, it wasn't always peaceful. We yelled, we screamed. There was moments of that. But the role that my mom played in my life was super pivotal, and I still have that relationship with her. And sometimes, you know, when we go through these things in life where we have worry, stress, we're mad, I just think about those moments with my mom. It's okay to laugh, and it's okay to joke about those things, and then to get out your feelings in conversations. So the next person that we're actually going to hear from, I think is awesome, and Megan has a very good relationship with her because it was her school counselor. Megan?
Yeah, so the next person we're hearing from is Paula Shaw. Like Becca said, she was my school counselor. She's actually the person that started helping me navigate through my anxiety and get the resources that I need. I'm still in really close contact with her today, so I'm super excited to hear from her. Shaw, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Well, I'm a high school counselor. I've been a high school counselor for 21 years. It's all I've ever wanted to do. You know, I love working with kids, mostly teenagers, because that's where my experience has been. But all kids are special. So but I have worked with a lot of kids that suffer through anxiety. Sometimes we don't understand it. We don't know why that these things happen to us. Sometimes I've experienced anxiety. Just recently, I had a panic anxiety attack that I took myself to the hospital, even though I knew in my head that it was anxiety, but it just your body just reacts to it in different ways. But I've worked with a lot of kids with anxiety. It seems to have ramped up a little bit, the number of kids that I see with anxiety. It could be the kids that you think that have it together, that are, the good kids, and, just you look at them and you think nothing could be wrong in their life. And then on this other spectrum, it's the kids that you would usually think of having anxiety, would be the ones, that don't have a lot of support at home, and anywhere in between. It can affect anybody, regardless of your situation. So I've had quite a bit of experience with working with teens with anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. So our first question for you is, what question should parents be asking their kids every single day to be able to gauge their mental health and where they're at?
That's probably going to get on kids' nerves, but that's just tough. They need to know, and, like you said, that, teenagers, they think they know everything, and that, parents don't understand them. But parents do. Parents are their child's first educator. They live with them. They do understand them. Kind of at this age, kids are trying to get their wings, and, they're going off to college or going off to work, and it's hard for parents for that to happen. But I think, with parents, just, how was your day? Ask open-ended questions so that they can't just say good or bad, or, something like that. Like, what did you do today? Who did you see? Who did you talk to? What did you do in school? Now, that's really going to get on their nerves, but that also lets the kids know that, and they'll eventually get it, that, hey, they do care about me. They do want to know what's going on with me. Just check in with them every day. Parents, tell your kids you love them. If they'll let you, give them a hug. Just be there for them and let them know that you're not going anywhere.
Absolutely. And then our second question is, how can I support my teenager's mental health when it comes to social media? So some examples were bullying, not being invited to social events, peer pressure, that sort of thing on social media.
Yes, social media is terrible. It can be a really good source. Like right now, it's a really good source. I think we have to teach our teenagers, starting young, because even, some elementary kids are on Facebook and social media and all that. I don't know all the other stuff, but they have to be taught how to use that, and taught how to discern what is good and what is bad. A lot of the teenage years are filled with, I should do this, I shouldn't do this, and perfectionism and control, and that just leads to anxiety. So I think parents need to monitor their social media accounts. Too many times, and Megan and Kyler, that a lot of issues are brought to school through social media. A lot of the drama comes from social media. So, I think parents need to get a handle on what is going on their child's account. Not where you don't trust them, but it's the other people that are on there. So if you notice a change in your child's behavior after they've been online, that's a big point to say, hey, what's going on? So I think just monitor their moods after they've been online, see if they changed at all, and then maybe you have to step in and say, hey, we're going to look at this and see what we need to do.
I would ask you kind of like a question off of that, in the role that you've played with kids in, an educator facility type of thing. Would you say that most kids, because what we see a lot of times our parents see on this side is like this pushback of their parents being in their lives in that manner, especially social media. Like, my mom's just trying to control my life, or they're not letting me have any fun or do what everybody else is doing. So from the conversations that you have with students, would you say that they are wanting that still? Like, they still kind of want that presence of a parent in their life in some way?
I think they do. Maybe not so much in the social media realm. And I think that should be like the last resort, because that's their thing, that's their privacy. They need that, unless it's being abused or somebody's abusing them or something like that. But I think that most kids want that person in their life. I see a lot of anxiety from those types of kids, that they want their parent involved with them when their parent's not. So I think that kids do want that. I do think they want a caring adult. Josh Shipp is a great resource, and he goes, every kid needs one caring adult. They're one caring adult away from being a success. So they do want that, and they do want structure, because they're still kids, and they know that they need direction deep down. The kids that have it probably don't think that. They're like, I got this, because they were, raised with, I'm here for you, and I know, I can make mistakes and be okay. But the kids that don't have that in their life, they're missing that.
Yeah, definitely. Another question we had was, what is the most important thing I can do to benefit my child's mental health?
Most important. I think you just have to be there. Don't be overprotective, but that's hard for parents not to do that. I know I am. But let them make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, and that's how they learn. I'm an only child, and I made mistakes, but they always picked it up, and, it was okay and all that kind of stuff. So when I got out on my own, I had no clue how the real world worked. And that was a shocker for me. Everybody's supposed to do what I want you to do, and give me what I want, and do what I ask you to do the first time, and it just doesn't happen. So I think, for parents to give their kids that a little bit of leeway, but be there to pick them up if they need that, and to teach them through their mistakes, and to let as far as mental health, let the kids know that, okay, you made a mistake. I still love you. That's not going to change. I'm still here for you. There's going to be consequences maybe, or this is a learning experience, but, don't rake kids over the coals. They're going to make mistakes. They're kids, and they have to learn. So, love them through their mistakes, hold them accountable. We see a lot of that in school where parents don't hold their kids accountable anymore. They want to be their friend. Don't be their friend. Be their parent. Be their guide, and teach them, how to navigate the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then our final question for you is, can you think of any examples of things that parents might do that they think is helping their child's mental health, or they think is helping their child, and in reality maybe it's making it a little bit worse or not helping them in the way they think they are?
Right. As parents, we want our kids to be happy and safe and not have any problems. And so, sometimes we overpower them. If a kid is having, suffering from anxiety, the worst thing you can do is hound them and say, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Because they might not know. So, it's hard. And as a counselor, we have to give them space. The worst thing you can do for a kid with anxiety that's suffering an anxiety attack, or, going through some anxiety, is to try to, hug them and, talk to them when they're not ready to talk. Sometimes the best thing to do is to leave them alone. Just let them know you're there. I know that, kids come into my office, and I'm like, do you want to talk? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, I'm here if you want to. I have a sand tray that's really neat. Just give something kids to do with their hands to try to get their mind elsewhere. Sometimes, just walk with your kid. That seems to work a lot. It calms them down and helps them breathe. But the biggest thing with a kid suffering anxiety is is not to overpower them and say, talk to me, tell me what's wrong. I know you know what's wrong, because they, 9 times out of 10, they don't know what's wrong. And then that just makes them feel worse, because I can't tell you what's wrong, and the parent gets upset and the kid gets upset, and that just does not help. But as a parent, you think they know, and you want to fix it, and so sometimes you can't fix it as a parent, and you have to accept that. But what you can do is be there, give them space. Sometimes you don't want to leave them alone. You want them in your sight. But you can just leave them alone and let them do their thing. Listen to music. Let them listen to music. Play-Doh. Kids love Play-Doh when they're going through anxiety. So I think that's the biggest thing is read your child. Try to read your child and see what they need. But they don't need you, I hate saying hounding, but that's just kind of how I talk. So hounding them, to tell you what's wrong, because that's just going to ramp up anxiety.
And I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed is, give that space that's necessary. And then I heard you say it several times, I'm here for you, I love you. Just those reassuring phrases, come back and let them know, like, I don't look at you any differently, because I've noticed a lot of times that kids that go through, anxiety or these moments, they feel terrible, and like the world's judging them and seeing them in this light, and that everybody now is like, their relationships are destroyed, and they question so many of those things. So I think just always going back to where they stand with you in your relationship, and knowing that you're going to keep walking through them. You don't see them any differently, and just remembering, like, I love you no matter what. I'm solid and I'm here for you.
Right, non-judgmental. Some parents go to the extreme. Oh, we're getting you to counseling right now. Yeah. And counseling's not a bad thing, but when you say it that way, it puts a negative connotation on it.
Absolutely.
I've really tried to break that stereotype at my school with coming to the counseling department is not a negative connotation. And just don't overreact. Give them that space, which is really hard as a parent, because you just want to grab them and hug them and say it's gonna be okay. And sometimes that's the worst thing you can do with a kid that's going through anxiety. They'll come to you. They will come to you. Once they settle down, then you can have the conversations that you need to have. But like you said, I don't see you any different. I know you just had a hard time. What can we do to help you? Yeah. And they're probably going to say, I don't know. And say, that's okay. We'll work through this together. Don't let them know that they're not alone.
Absolutely. Last of the questions? Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us so much, Shaw. Megan loves you so much in the way that she speaks of you. So we're grateful, as you said earlier, for that one adult away from success. And I know for her, you've played such a huge role in that. We appreciate everything that you do for students and their families.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So just to finish up that conversation, again, it's not always going to be perfect. I think a lot of times we want to look at those things as we know exactly what to say. Just keep trying. It's really important. And it's always helpful to remember that, again, these kids don't know what they're going through, and they may come back eventually to the conversation and still not be able to put words to it. As I've walked a lot of students through, this is a very time thing. And sometimes we look at, an hour, sometimes we look at a week, 5 months, a year, and you have to be willing to give that space that's necessary for those kids to process those things and be okay to talk about them when they're ready to. So the very last person that you guys are going to hear from is actually a very, very dear friend of mine. I've worked with her for the past couple years, and she is going to share a little bit of her story, just kind of like Megan shared earlier about her walking through anxiety. My friend Danielle has walked through a lot of hard times in her life, a lot of distress, a lot of moments that have gotten her down. And what I love about her story is that she didn't stay where she was at, and she's found these really helpful tools for herself, and hopefully for others and for you guys as well, about what it looks like to walk through those hard moments of life. And one of her main things that she talks about is just changing your mindset, remembering that, today is a new day and you get a new choice for yourself. Yesterday, what you chose, it doesn't have to carry into today. And so she's been walking along that journey, and I want you guys to hear a little bit of her story.
Hey everybody, I am Danielle, and I hope you guys are finding things to keep you busy and finding things that spark joy in your life right now, especially during all these crazy times. I'm glad we were able to come together over social media, and I'm very thankful that the church in COF Youth is putting this together. I was asked to share a little more about my personal health journey and some of the things that I've learned to do to just shift my life into more of a positive lifestyle and have a healthier mindset, I'd say. During high school, I think I was probably experiencing depression. Now that I kind of know what it is, I believe I lived through it through high school. I had feelings of just feeling hopeless and empty, and you just feel sad and you can't explain why. There was no particular reason why, and it wasn't every single day. I'd have really good days, and then there's just some days where I just want to stay in bed and I really didn't want to do anything. And I would say these things probably last until my second year of marriage, where I just realized I really needed to make a change. A lot of my family live with a negative mindset, just mental issues themselves, and they have all gone through it too, so they didn't particularly know how to help me in that aspect. And I just kind of accepted that it was my life and this is how I'm going to live, and I'm going to be depressed forever, pretty much. I just hear more frequently, especially with social media, that people are coming out with that they're depressed and they have anxiety, which I think is great that we're putting a name to these feelings, but I also think it's super important to focus on that next step, because there are very important next steps to overcome these feelings and these things. You hear so much, and I've even said it, is I don't know who I am. Who am I? And I think we need to stop saying who am I and just start being. Just be those things that you want to be, whether it's a good daughter, a good mom, a good student, you want to be happy. Just start being those things, start practicing. And I realized when I was going through all of these things that I was letting the world define who I was. I was letting the world tell me who I was. And the longer you let the world tell you who you are, the further away you get from the ability to name who you are and define who you are as a person. And so the past few years, going through all these things and realizing I really needed to make a change, I made all these changes, and my life just completely flipped upside down in more of a positive way. I started looking at the world different. I changed my attitude and the words I spoke out loud and the words that I spoke to myself. I just think, and I truly believe, that if you have a positive mindset, you're going to end up having a positive life in return. So I wanted to share just a few of the big things that I did and I still do to just live in more of a positive mindset, and it helped me overcome depression and multiple times. If you have depression, it just doesn't go away. I think you can use these tools to help you overcome it way easier and way quicker once you recognize that you're living in maybe a little more negative space. One of the most important things that I do, and I encourage you to do yourself, is be your own best friend. It sounds very, very odd, but I want you to be your best friend today, and I want you to be your best friend tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. Just think about your most favorite person, the person that you love the most, a family member, your best friend. If they're feeling down and discouraged, what are the words that you're speaking into their lives, and how do you encourage them during those times? And I want you to speak those things to yourself, because I feel like oftentimes we do not speak life into our own lives. We don't nurture ourselves and say kind things to ourselves like we do our best friends. So just be super aware of the thoughts that are going through your mind about yourself. Just have, it sounds so weird and it's going to feel weird, but just have nice conversations with yourself. Lift yourself up. Say kind words when you look into the mirror. It's all about breaking this habit of speaking negative things, because once we get into the habit of that, your mind just naturally works that way, and it's just going to produce those negative things naturally. So we got to break that habit with those positive thoughts, and that's why it feels so unnatural when we begin to do it. But this is something that has changed my life, because if you're not on your own side, who is? So once you start becoming more comfortable with who you are and you begin loving yourself, it really feels like the world isn't pushing against you anymore. So I really encourage you to do that. It feels unnatural, but again, just work with me. So another thing that I did to help me overcome some negative times in my life is filter what I was letting into my life. It may seem very simple, but we don't really realize the things that we're letting in and the things that we let dwell in our minds, how much it's changing our mindset. So what you're taking in audibly, like music, what you're watching on Netflix, podcasts you're listening to. I was the queen of scary movies and thriller movies, and I can tell you none of that was doing good things to my mind. So when you're in a negative mindset, say you feel like you're in about depression, just really be careful of what you're letting in. You want to fill your time with things that spark joy, people that are inspirational, things that spark creativity. Some of the things I did was look up YouTube channels of things I like to do, which is mostly on the creative aspect of things, so like photography, design, just anything that sparks joy and creativity in your life. Find a couple people that can speak life into what you're living in right now. So find a good book. These are just all things that seem so simple and that you think won't do much, but I promise it's going to have a great outcome in the ending. So I think one of the most important things I did that was truly life-changing was to be very, very aware of what I was thinking about. So it took me all day long, 24/7, of filtering my thoughts, and I was the ultimate Debbie Downer. 24/7, I thought about the worst case scenario. I turned every thought into criticism, and I just had to take every single thought and alter it into a positive one, however that was. So I just encourage you, it seems very forceful at first, but I promise it's so worth it. Just be very aware of what you're thinking about. If you think something negative, stop and switch it with a positive one and repeat it. It's all about breaking those bad habits and forming new ones. And these habits that seem that you're changing so forcefully, it becomes so much more easier once you just keep practicing and practicing. And these tips aren't just a do one time and it changes everything. You have to do these things every single day, and once you keep doing them every day, they get easier. And I'm not going to say that these things are going to stop you from having a bad day or are going to stop you from getting depressed, but they are amazing tools to help pick you back up. Just to give you things in your tool belt instead of just sitting there with this, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, and you don't know the next step. So I hope these 3 steps are helpful for you, because they were life-changing for me. And I just want to thank Megan and Becca and COF Youth for inviting me to talk, and I hope this helped somebody. I'm just very thankful to be able to sit here and talk to you guys about these things, because they're so important, and I just hope you guys continue on with having a great evening and a great day, and talk to you again sometime, maybe.
All right, so as you just saw, you heard from Danielle. Again, we love her story. I love who she is as a person. And I love that, again, it's a daily journey, so just continuing to walk these things out. You know, as Megan will tell you, she continues to walk these things out. There's moments that I deal with this in life, that I continue to walk these things out. I have lots of students who this journey is ever constantly going for them. And so just continuing these things. So we are glad that you guys joined us tonight on this conversation. Hopefully it's left you with some insight and maybe some tools. And one of the things that we want to do for you all is we want to leave you with some resources to be able to feel like you have this conversation better and to be able to continue these conversations after this moment. And so if you would, if you're already on the website, awesome. But if you're not, you're going to go to cofchurches.com/mental health. And there you guys are going to find lots of resources that we've put together. We have some websites that we have recommendations from, some podcasts as well. There'll be some conversation guides on there that you can look through as a parent, just cues to be able to have with your kids, signs to kind of look for that may clue you into that they're having a tough time and different things like that. And then Megan has put together a workbook, and she's simplified it a little bit because of the way that we've chosen to do this online due to current circumstances. But she is going to be launching those out weekly, so it would be something for your students to work through as well. So Megan, you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started just merging everything that I have found that's worked for me so far into a workbook. So whether that's things my clinical counselor gave me, my school counselor, my mentors, people at church, I just put them all together and then kind of wrote about why it helped me, what I had to learn to make it work, just kind of trying to get people the things that helped me ahead of where I was at when I received them so that they can be the most effective they can be. So I'm super excited to release that. They're interactive. There's activities that they can do. So I think it will be really good.
Yeah, so if you guys get the chance, please go over, find some of those resources. And as always, we are not expertise by any manner, but we obviously have walked through a couple of these things personally and then with students as well, and from our experts that we have heard from tonight. So if you guys need anything at all, if you just want to have a conversation, want some more information, please feel free to contact us, and we would love to be able to help you as best as possible. And then I want to give one last shout out to this girl right here. As we talked about at the beginning of this, that she spent a lot of months, but for really since January 1st when we made some goals, this girl has put countless, and I mean countless hours in the office, at coffee shops, at home, creating all this content, putting this night together. And I'm just so inspired by not only like her journey of what all this has looked like, but her want to help others, and then to put such excellence into this night, into the stuff that she's created for your students, which we're so excited about. And so just a huge thank you to her and to all the work that she's put into this night for you guys, and the fact that we wanted to help create better tools for you. We are hoping for the best conversations, and again, it's a journey, so just take it one day at a time. Today is a new day to start a new conversation, and we are praying for each and every single one of you. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope that you have an awesome evening.